Kirby is a popular character amongst Nintendo fans, and while he's most well known for his inhale and copy abilities, where he swallows certain enemies and acquires their abilities and weapons for himself, in his newest adventure, Kirby in the Forgotten Land, this ability is given a strange twist. Instead of completely swallowing enemies to take their powers, he can also use his new Mouthful Mode to wrap his body around inanimate objects and use its shape and functions to his advantage. We thought it would be fun to try and figure out which Mouthful Mode abilities stand out above the others. I'm Kyle with 1UP Binge, and this is Kirby in the Forgotten Land, Mouthful Mode abilities worst to best. There are a couple things we want to get out of the way before the actual list. First and foremost, we don't think any of these abilities are necessarily bad, especially since each one is typically used for a specific purpose or environment. We're going to primarily focus on the way each one functions and how useful they seem to be overall. We also want to mention how, since this game just came out recently, these abilities are still fresh in our minds, and our thoughts are heavily based on our initial experiences using them. With all that out of the way, let's inhale like Kirby, exhale, and get started. As usual, we'll be starting with the worst and working our way up to the best. Starting out with our lowest spot, the dome mouth. In this state, Kirby can wrap his mouth around the top of a capsule-like object. By wiggling around a little bit, Kirby can pop the top half off and reveal the hidden contents inside, and in some cases even save some waddle-dees occasionally. But there really isn't much else it does, as Kirby can't really move again until he pops the capsule open or spits it back out. Similarly, our next spot goes to the storage mouth. We won't talk about this one for too long, as the storage mouth functions almost identically to the dome mouth. The only difference here is that the object Kirby wraps his mouth around is much bigger, and he can uncover much bigger sections of a wall to find hidden secrets behind the storage. But let's move into some abilities where Kirby can actually move around a bit. The first of which is the scissor lift mouth ability. Kirby takes a ride on a rail of sorts in a straight line, able to stretch his body up and down like a scissor lift while moving side to side. Upon spitting out the scissor lift, Kirby will jump at the max height that the scissor lift can reach, which Kirby could potentially use to his advantage. There isn't a whole lot much else that can be done with this ability, hence why it's ranked so low. If you like amusement parks, you might like the roller coaster mouth. This ability is very similar to the scissor lift, as Kirby wraps his mouth around an object traveling along a rail. Instead of adjusting in height, Kirby will adjust angle, tilting left and right to interact with whatever appears on either side of the rail at any given point. Though what helps the roller coaster mouth edge out above the scissor lift is his speed. Since it's a roller coaster, Kirby will travel much faster as he traverses down the rail, which actually makes it a lot more fun to use. Our next entry will leave you enlightened because it's the light bulb mouth. The biggest advantage this ability has over any of the others so far is that Kirby's general movements are not nearly as limited. The dome and storage mouth prevents Kirby from moving much at all, and the last two entries had a limited path on which they took. Kirby, as a walking light bulb, can easily move in any direction. Additionally, Kirby is able to light up, allowing him to find regular and hidden paths in darker areas, as well as provide power to various machines. The only drawback this ability seems to have is when Kirby lights up, his movement is slowed down a bit. But other than that, this ability is pretty lit. I'm sorry for the pun. Following the light bulb, we now have the arch mouth. When wrapping his mouth around something in the shape of an arch, Kirby essentially turns into a glider and is able to travel long distances with ease without touching the ground. While doing this, Kirby can rotate his body to perform a spin attack that looks suspiciously like a certain Star Fox R-Wing maneuver. And this ability is definitely fun to use. The only reason we don't rank it any higher is because the gliding he can do is something Kirby could already kind of do naturally for an unprecedented amount of time, just not with as much speed. Next, we have the stairs mouth ability. Like most of the other ability names, this one is pretty self-explanatory. Kirby wraps his mouth around a set of stairs, which helps him in two ways. First, he takes the stairs that he consumes and uses this ability to transport them to another location. This can help you access points higher up in the levels that his natural hovering would allow him to reach on his own. And not only that, but while Kirby is moving around in this state, he can essentially fall over as a means of attacking. This can come in handy when flattening certain enemies, or clearing certain obstacles out of his way. Hopefully, Kirby doesn't cause too much traffic with this next ability, which is the cone mouth. Sadly, this doesn't mean that Kirby turns into a walking ice cream cone, but the cone mouth is still pretty cool. While in this state, Kirby's movement speed is decreased a little bit, but he still has more than enough jumping power to go up into the air for a second in order to attack his enemies from above. This move is actually very useful. On top of the standard attack, this maneuver greatly assists Kirby in the level's environments. Various objects that would otherwise be unbreakable can be destroyed by the cone when striking. There are also several instances where Kirby can find a crack in something like a pipe or in the ground, and use the cone to poke his way through, often resulting in finding some useful secrets. Lastly, because the attack involves quickly jumping up for a second, this move can be very helpful in allowing Kirby to dodge a threat coming towards him at the last second. If Kirby could run at normal speeds and maintain his hovering, this may have wound up towards the top of our list. Now let's move on to Kirby's water balloon mouth. Instead of wrapping his mouth around a specific object, Kirby intakes an incredibly large amount of water for this ability. This makes him move pretty slow, but he still has some good uses for the water similar to his standard water ability in other games. He can spray his foes as well as water plants in the area that will help uncover some secrets. What gives this ability some bonus points is its possible link to Super Mario Sunshine. In that game, Mario has the flood pack that allows him to spray water, which helped him clean up a lot of messes in Delfino Plaza. Kirby can essentially do the same thing here. There are areas covered in sludge that Kirby can spray to get rid of. Even if a reference to Sunshine wasn't originally intended, many fans will probably still appreciate the feature. If you're looking for a nice cold beverage, Kirby's vending machine mouth has you covered. Remember in Kirby 64 when Kirby could turn himself into a fridge when combining certain abilities? That's essentially what happens here. Kirby becomes a walking vending machine that dispenses cans, which helps him in two ways. The first being how he can launch them at his enemies as a means of attack. He can also use them to help break durable obstacles that may be in the way, sometimes uncovering more secrets. Then, if the cans don't hit anything, Kirby can pick them back up to use again. This ultimately helps with the ability's biggest problem. Kirby only has a limited amount of cans that he can launch out. However, as long as it isn't spammed, along with the fact that his stock can be replenished a bit, Kirby should be fine with his ammo supply. Some people say that if you hold a face for too long, it could stick that way, and that could be what happened when Kirby uses the ring mouth ability. But don't let the appearance fool you. Kirby essentially becomes a walking air cannon when taking on this shape. Due to this, he is capable of blasting out a large gust of wind. This can primarily be used in 3 different ways. Kirby can blow away certain enemies in the vicinity if they get too close. On top of that, this allows him to do what other Mouthful abilities have previously granted, in destroying various objects that would have been unbreakable otherwise. The feature that makes this one stand out further is its use for transportation. While standing on a boat or raft, Kirby can use the burst of air he can produce to propel himself in any direction, making traversing those environments a bit easier. The bronze medal for our favorite Mouthful Mode ability is the pipe mouth. This ability could be seen as similar to the scissor lift mouth if it was a lot more destructive. Upon consuming a pipe, Kirby starts rolling down a slope. This makes him nearly indestructible, as any standard enemy in his way will be destroyed on contact. He can still jump a little while in this state, allowing him to avoid certain obstacles upon approach. If he runs into a wall or a non-breakable obstacle, however, Kirby will stop, and he can't move again until he spits the pipe back out. However, if Kirby is able to maintain pipe mouth until the very end of the slope he's rolling on, he's often rewarded in a very nice way. This essentially makes pipe mouth a mini-game of sorts that provides a fun challenge. Taking the silver medal on our list is the car mouth. At this point in time, this is the Mouthful ability that most people would probably recognize the most. After all, it's the first one people can obtain in the demo and full game. And when the reveal trailer for the game came out, this was the first Mouthful ability everybody saw. Function-wise, this ability does exactly as expected. While wrapped around the car, Kirby, or as we like to call him here, Carby, drives around just like a car would. This ability allows him to plow through enemies with ease while traversing the terrain in any direction. He can also move much faster than he could normally, especially when the boost is activated. While doing this, he can also knock down certain walls to use as more road to travel on. If there are any ramps and the like in the area, he can use those to his advantage and access extra areas that also take advantage of this ability. He can still get hurt in this state, like he can with most abilities, but boosting makes him almost invincible anyways. Finally, we get to our gold medal spot. If you were hoping that the car mouth would take the top spot, don't worry, as this last entry functions in a very similar manner, that being the big rig mouth. Kirby wraps around the top of an entire truck for this ability, and it really packs a punch. As the big rig, he can plow right through pretty much anyone or anything that gets in his way. And spoiler alert for this part, but what really helps solidify the ranking for this ability is the fact that it's used to help defeat the final boss in the game. That, combined with it being a bigger and stronger version of the car, is why we feel comfortable putting the big rig mouth at the top spot of our list. But what do you think? Which Mouthful Mode from Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the most fun to use? Let us know in the comment section below. Do us a huge favor and like this video, and if you need a one-up, make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our other Kirby and Nintendo videos. Thanks for watching.